What is the torque of a combustion engine and why is it useful to know at least a little about it? Nautical tips in a nutshell, follow us. Let me start with the usual disclaimers. Why? Because I haven't studied physics, I'm not a physicist, I'm not a super technician, and I'm not a mechanic. That said, I do have some experience, but that doesn't make me a mechanic. But knowing what the torque of a combustion engine is essential if you want to understand, or if you're interested in understanding why your boat might work differently from your friends, or what the best choice would be for your next purchase. So follow us. As usual, I'll be using simple and straightforward language to give examples so that even those without experience can understand what torque is and what it's for. So if you're a super technical person, I don't know. Anyway, cover your ears because I might use some incorrect terms, but my goal is to make myself understood by as many people as possible. First of all, what is torque? Torque is the force needed to make something rotate. Specifically, in an internal combustion engine, it makes the crankshaft turn, it makes the whole system rotate, so torque is the force required to spin the entire system. Let me get right to something that used to drive me crazy as a kid. So, the moral of the story, why on earth is it called torque and not force? Why? I'll explain it to you in a really simple way, trying to help you understand it the way I did. So, why is it called torque? Because to move this in this direction, okay, you need a force, so that's torque. Why torque? Because in the casein, the matter of the combustion engine, there's a force that pulls and a force that pushes. These two forces, one pulling and the other pushing, are a pair of forces, so that's why it's called torque. That's it. We have two factors of movement, torque and power. Torque is the force needed to make something turn, while power is the speed you get. They are the two main things. To understand this even better in the context of boats, because that's what I know something about, is not just about horsepower, so it's not just power that you need to choose or understand to know whether something works well or not. Let me give you a practical example. We could have a tractor trailer with 1000 horsepower, and we could have a Formula 1 car, I think, which might also have 1000 horsepower, or maybe a Formula 3. I'm not sure, but in any case, a race car. If we take 1000 horsepower and 1000 horsepower, in theory, they should perform the same, but that's not the case, because the additional factor that comes into play as a determining factor is torque. In a race car, torque, that is, the development of maximum torque, which gives the best engine response occurs at very high RPMs, but from a standstill to get moving, and especially if there's a load attached behind, it can't even move it. On the other hand, a truck has all its torque at low RPMs right from the start, so it can get moving even with the trailer completely loaded and is able to start and move. This is the big difference. With the same power, meaning the same horsepower, we get two completely different effects. Moving on to the topic of boats. Okay, horsepower matters. But if we choose an engine that delivers its power mainly at high RPMs, I should pick this engine to pair with a light boat, or if I just like going very fast, so it might take a few seconds or a fraction of a second longer to get on plane. Then, once it gets on plane, it will be extremely fast. With the same horsepower, if on the other hand, I choose an engine with more torque at lower RPMs, or one that starts to deliver power, basically torque, earlier in the engine's rev range. So as you accelerate, what will happen? What will happen is that the boat itself will get out of the water sooner, because in this phase you need a lot of force to be able to get out of the water. Once it's out of the water, it might be a bit less fast compared to the other option, but I managed to get on plane, and maybe I can afford to carry a lot of weight, people on board, which I might not be able to do with the other solution. This also answers the questions I often get asked. Why does this 12-meter boat only have this much horsepower? Or why does that 8-meter boat have so much? Depending on the type of design, the planning of the boat, or the inflatable, on what I want to use it for, or my target customer for that kind of vessel, I will decide whether it will be a boat or an inflatable that needs to run at very high RPMs and go very fast, or one that will normally run at lower RPMs, heavily loaded, and maybe at lower RPMs, but always with torque, so that torque is always available. Again, this isn't exactly the correct terminology, but it's to give you images that will stick in your mind. Let's say that this wrench is what I need to turn this screw up here. Okay? So if I use torque down low at a low height, so low torque well, torque down low is better, I will be applying a certain kind of leverage. For example, if I do it this way, I use much less effort to loosen or tighten the bolt in terms of energy spent, it will be much easier. Torque down low, torque up high. So towards the top of the range, okay, I'll have to use much more effort to tighten or loosen this screw. But then, why would someone want to have the torque up high? Because if we think about it, at very high revolutions of this screw, I'll have less movement. That's why race cars, as we mentioned earlier, have high-end torquetto, allow for the best use of the whole system, precisely when they're running at very high RP, miss. I hope I haven't bored you too much with these very technical things, but the goal is precisely to help you understand that you need to choose the right compromise. And if you have doubts about the things you've bought, why yours doesn't work well or works better than others, very often the answer, assuming everything else is equal, if everything is working properly with no errors or technical issues, maybe it's simply due to the design of the engine you have installed on your boat. The manufacturer may have decided to have it reach its maximum torque at 5,000 RPM or at 3,000 RPM or at 1,000 RPM. So not all horsepower is the same depending on where the manufacturer chose to set the torque. My advice, don't drive yourself crazy trying to find the perfect condition, the best. The absolute best simply doesn't exist. What exists is what's best for you at this particular moment in your life. So look for what you like the most, find the best compromise by getting advice to a technician who can really guide you, whether it's the dealer, the salesperson, whoever, and then just enjoy yourself and sail the seas. All of this is just what you need to feel good, nothing more. All that's left for me to say is fair winds and always keep an eye on the weather.